At the peak of a billion-dollar contract, a powerful man is about to lose everything by unknowingly signing his own fate. But when a girl in a wheelchair crashes the meeting and reveals the truth hidden between the lines, the empire that seemed indestructible begins to crumble, and justice awakens through the voice no one wanted to hear. If you like stories like this, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comment saying where you're listening from. Fifth Avenue shimmered under the afternoon sun, its skyscrapers reflecting the light and creating a scene of power and wealth. On the 32nd floor of the most imposing building, Richard Mendonça gazed at New York City through his office windows. At 45, he was the CEO of Mendonça Developments, one of the largest construction companies in the United States. His empire stretched across the country, but his ambition knew no bounds. The Chinese just confirmed the meeting for Friday. "Richard," said his secretary Dora, entering the room with a folder of documents. "They'll bring the final contract for signing." Richard smiled, running a hand through the graying hair at his temples. This deal with the Chinese conglomerate represented the biggest opportunity of his career. A luxury real estate complex that would transform the Hamptons and generate billions in profits. "Excellent, Dora. Confirm my schedule and let Camilla know I'll be home later today. I want to review some details before the meeting." As Dora left, Richard picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Hello, little brother." Philip's, his younger brother's animated voice sounded from the other end. "Have you heard the good news?" "Just confirmed. We signed the contract on Friday. That calls for a celebration. I'm on my way." Richard hung up the phone and returned to contemplating the city. He had built his empire with hard work, overcoming humble origins in a small town in rural Ohio. Now, he was about to solidify his position among the most powerful men in the country. A few miles away, beneath the Manhattan Bridge, reality was completely different. Sophia Oliver, 12, adjusted her makeshift wheelchair, made from an old office chair and supermarket trolley wheels. Her small calloused hands moved deftly as she organized her few belongings. Some books rescued from the trash, donated clothes, and a notebook where she wrote her thoughts. Sophia had no family. Abandoned at 6 in a shelter due to her paraplegia, a result of a complication during childbirth, she had run away 3 years later, tired of the mistreatment and neglect. On the streets of New York City, she learned to survive using her greatest skill, intelligence. "Hey, little teacher," called Mr. Gerald, an elderly man who lived under the same bridge. "Read this document for me." They said it's about government aid. Sophia took the paper carefully. Mr. Gerald respected her because, despite her age, she could read and understand documents that were incomprehensible to many adults there. "It's a notice about re-registration. Mr. Gerald, you need to go to the community center by the end of the month. Otherwise, the benefit will be suspended." The old man thanked her, offering Sophia half of a sandwich he had managed to get. She accepted gratefully, saving a portion for later. Hunger was a constant companion. At dusk, Sophia pushed her chair along Park Avenue when it started to rain. She took shelter under the awning of an elegant restaurant, watching the hurried people entering and leaving with their umbrellas and expensive coats. Inside the restaurant, Richard Mendonça dined with his wife, Camilla, a 38-year-old woman, elegant and sophisticated. Camilla had studied international relations in France and spoke 5 languages. Her marriage to Richard 10 years ago had been considered the social event of the year. "The Chinese are eager to close the deal," Richard commented, savoring a prize-winning wine. "Mr. Zhang will come personally for the signing." Camilla smiled, adjusting the diamond necklace around her neck. "And do you understand what's written in the contract? Mandarin isn't exactly an accessible language. Our lawyers have analyzed everything, and you yourself translated the main parts." "Of course, dear. I'm just making sure everything is under control." Camilla touched her husband's hand with feigned concern. "After all, it's the biggest deal of your life." Richard didn't notice the calculating glint in his wife's eyes. Focused on his plate, he didn't see when she exchanged a message on her phone. Everything as planned. He suspects nothing. Across town in a luxurious apartment, Philip Mendonça received the message. He smiled, pouring himself more whiskey. Since childhood, he had lived in the shadow of his older brother. Richard had always been the brilliant, the determined, the successful one. Philip, on the other hand, had only managed to secure a director position in his brother's company purely through nepotism. His failures were many, as were his gambling debts. "This time, little brother, it will be different," he murmured to himself, looking at a photo of the two of them on the wall. "This time I'm going to win." When Richard and Camilla left the restaurant, the rain had subsided. Sophia remained huddled under the awning, shivering from the cold. Richard noticed the girl as he passed and stopped, surprising Camilla. "What is it, Richard?" He didn't answer immediately. Something about the girl's fragile figure touched him deeply. Perhaps it was memories of his own impoverished childhood, or perhaps it was just human empathy. "Wait a moment," he said, heading to the car and returning with a package. Sophia watched the elegant man approaching with suspicion. On the streets, she had learned to be cautious. "Hello," Richard said gently. "I asked them to pack the rest of our meal. I thought you might be hungry." Sophia hesitated, but the aroma of the food was irresistible. She accepted the package, muttering a shy thank you. "It's too cold to be out on the street," Richard commented. "Don't you have anywhere to go?" Before Sophia could answer, Camilla intervened, pulling her husband's arm. "Richard, please. We've given her food. We can't help all the homeless people in New York City. Besides, we have that meeting in half an hour." Richard hesitated, feeling conflicted. Finally, he took his wallet from his pocket and handed Sophia some bills. "Look for a shelter to spend the night," he said, with genuine concern. Sophia took the money, noticing something Richard didn't: a small card that fell from his wallet. When the couple walked away, she picked up the card and read the name: Richard Mendonza, CEO Mendonza Developments, followed by an address and phone number. She carefully put the card away, feeling an inexplicable connection to the man who had shown kindness without expecting anything in return. The next morning, Philip met Camilla at a discreet cafe in the Upper East Side. Both had maintained a secret relationship for years, united not by love, but by ambition and resentment against Richard. "Everything is prepared," Philip said, handing Camilla a folder. The fake translator confirmed his presence, and the contract in Mandarin is ready. Camilla leafed through the documents, satisfied. "Richard doesn't understand a word of Mandarin. He'll sign thinking he's closing the deal of the century, when in reality he'll be transferring everything to us. And what about this Mr. Zhang? Does he really exist?" Camilla smiled maliciously. "He exists. He's just not who Richard thinks. I hired an actor, Paul Nash, an expert in portraying foreigners. We had a rehearsal yesterday and he's perfect for the role. The plan was meticulous. Richard would sign a contract that, instead of sealing the partnership with the Chinese, would transfer control of his companies to an offshore holding company controlled by Philip and Camilla. When he discovered the fraud, it would be too late. Meanwhile, Sophia had spent the night thinking about the kind man. She decided to return the card and thank him for the food and money. Using the little she had, she bought a bus ticket and headed to the Mendonza Developments address. The imposing company building intimidated Sophia. She had never been in such a luxurious place. At the reception, she was immediately approached by security guards. "What do you want here, girl?" one of them asked suspiciously. "I need to speak with Mr. Richard Mendonza. I have something that belongs to him." The security guards laughed. "And you think Dr. Richard will receive a—" The man stopped, embarrassed for almost saying something offensive about Sophia's condition. "Please," she insisted. "It's important." At that moment, Camilla crossed the lobby, returning from her meeting with Philip. She noticed the commotion and approached. "Any problem, Paul?" she asked the security guard. "This girl says she needs to speak with Dr. Richard, Mrs. Mendonza." Camilla looked at Sophia with disdain. "And what would a girl like you have to say to my husband?" Sophia stared at the elegant woman, feeling an immediate dislike. There was something false in her smile, something that reminded her of the social workers who pretended to care about the children at the shelter. "He dropped a card yesterday when he helped me. I just want to return it and thank him." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "Ah, so you were the poor girl he fed yesterday?" Her tone was condescending. "How touching. Unfortunately, my husband is too busy to receive fans. You can give me the card and I'll hand it to him." Sophia hesitated, feeling she shouldn't trust that woman. "I'd prefer to deliver it personally." "That won't be possible," Camilla replied coldly. "Paul, please escort this young lady to the exit." As she was escorted out, Sophia looked back and saw Camilla talking on the phone, looking agitated. She decided not to give up so easily. If she couldn't enter through the front door, she would find another way. She headed to the back of the building where the service entrance was located. She observed employees entering and leaving, some carrying supplies, others uniformed in cleaning attire. An idea began to form in her mind. She approached a woman who was unloading bottles of mineral water from a van. "Excuse me, ma'am. I really need help." The woman looked at Sophia with curiosity, surprised by the unexpected request. "Girl, what are you doing here alone?" Sophia took a deep breath, deciding to risk everything on sincerity. "I need to speak with Mr. Richard Mendonça. That's very important, but they wouldn't let me in through the reception." The woman, who introduced herself as Ms. Celia, looked around, hesitant. "I don't know, dear. I could lose my job if I helped someone get in without authorization." "Please," Sophia begged. "Mr. Richard helped me yesterday when I was starving. I just want to thank him and return something he lost." Something in the sincerity of Sophia's gaze moved Miss Celia. After a few seconds of reflection, the woman sighed. "All right, but if anyone asks, you're my niece who came to help me today, understood?" Sophia nodded, gratitude illuminating her face. Miss Celia handed her an apron and a cap from the service company, helping her to disguise herself. Then she pushed Sophia's wheelchair to the service elevator. "Dr. Richard is on the top floor, but be careful with his wife, Mrs. Camilla. They say she has eagle eyes and a snake's tongue." Sophia thanked her for the advice as the elevator ascended. Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and determination. When the doors opened on the top floor, she took a deep breath and pushed her chair into the corridor. The executive floor of Mendonça Developments was a world apart. Marble floors, glass walls, hurried executives in impeccable suits. Sophia moved discreetly, following Miss Celia's directions on how to reach Richard's office. Turning a corner, she stopped abruptly. Voices came from a meeting room with the door ajar. She immediately recognized one of them, Camilla. "The contract is perfect," she was saying to someone. "Richard doesn't understand a word of Mandarin. He'll depend entirely on the translation we provide." "What if he asks an external expert to review it?" asked a male voice Sophia didn't recognize. "Impossible. I convinced him it would be an offense to the Chinese. A matter of business etiquette, you see. Besides, time is short. The signing is in 2 days." Sophia felt a shiver. Something was wrong, very wrong. She moved closer to the door, trying to hear better. "What do we have here?" A male voice behind her startled her. Sophia turned quickly, finding a man who looked slightly like Richard, but with harsher features and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he continued, examining her suspiciously. "Which cleaning company are you from?" I came with my aunt," Sophia stammered. "She forgot her lunch and I came to bring it." The man narrowed his eyes, clearly not believing the story. "Philip, who are you talking to?" Camilla appeared at the room door and her eyes widened as she recognized Sophia. What are you doing here?" Realizing the danger, Sophia spun her chair and began to move quickly down the corridor. "Stop her!" Camilla shouted. She might have heard something. Philip ran after Sophia while Camilla called security. The chase began through the elegant corridors of the company, with Sophia skillfully maneuvering her chair, a result of years on the streets developing strength and dexterity. Reaching the elevator, Sophia pressed the button desperately. The doors opened just as Philip caught up to her. Entering quickly, she managed to close them before he could grab her. "On the ground floor, they'll be waiting for you," Philip threatened through the closing door crack. Sophia knew he was right. She pressed the button for the 25th floor, determined to buy time to think. When the elevator stopped, she quickly exited, looking for a hiding place. She found a small office supply closet and entered, closing the door silently. Breathing heavily, Sophia tried to organize her thoughts. What she had heard was serious. Camilla and Philip, apparently Richard's brother, were planning to deceive him with a fake contract. She needed to warn him, but how? She was being hunted inside his own company building. She heard voices in the corridor, security guards looking for her. She huddled behind a bookshelf, praying not to be found. After a few minutes, which seemed like hours, the voices faded. Sophia took the opportunity to leave the closet and look for another escape route. At the other end of the floor, she found a different elevator, probably used by executives. It was risky, but her only option. She pressed the button, and when the doors opened, she quickly entered. In the main lobby, Richard Mendonça was returning from a client lunch when he was approached by Camilla, visibly nervous. "Richard? Dear, we need to talk," she said, trying to maintain composure. "There was an attempted invasion of the company." "Invasion? What are you talking about?" "A street girl tried to get in. She said she knew you, but the security guards identified her as a known con artist who has tried to defraud other executives before." Richard frowned, confused. "A girl? How old was she?" "I don't know, maybe 12 or 13. She was in a wheelchair, probably to evoke pity." Richard's eyes widened in recognition. "Wait, was it a girl I met last night? I gave her food on the way out of the restaurant." "Probably," Camilla replied quickly. "These con artists are clever. They observe important people, create a touching story, and then try to exploit others' goodwill." Richard didn't seem convinced. He clearly remembered the girl's eyes. There was sincerity in them. "Where is she now?" "The security guards escorted her out." "Don't worry, dear, it's all resolved." Camilla quickly changed the subject. "Did you remember we have dinner with the investors tonight?" Meanwhile, Sophia had managed to reach the ground floor by another elevator, avoiding the security guards who were looking for her. Hidden behind a large ornamental plant in the lobby, she watched Richard and Camilla talking. She wanted to run to him, reveal everything, but knew she would be stopped before she could say a word. She needed a better plan, and she needed to understand exactly what was happening. When Richard and Camilla walked away, Sophia took the opportunity to slip out of the building, avoiding being seen by the security guards. Once on the street, she breathed a sigh of relief, but knew her mission was just beginning. The next day, Richard was in his office reviewing documents for the meeting with the Chinese when his brother Philip entered without knocking. "Nervous about the big day, little brother?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Anxious would be the right word," Richard replied. "This deal could double the company's value." "And you fully trust these Chinese?" "I mean, the contract is in Mandarin." Richard looked at his brother with some irritation. "We've discussed this, Philip. We have reliable translators, and Camilla checked the main points. She speaks a little Mandarin, remember?" Philip raised his hands in surrender. "I'm just being cautious. After all, you're putting all your assets into this deal." "Not all, but a significant portion," Richard admitted. "The risk is proportionate to the return." Philip smiled, disguising the malice in his eyes. "Well then, let's hope everything goes well tomorrow." Meanwhile, Sophia had returned to beneath the Manhattan Bridge, her refuge on the streets of New York City. There she shared her experience with Mr. Gerald and Ms. Marlene, a former teacher who also lived on the streets. "I'm sure they're plotting something against this, Richard," Sophia concluded. "The problem is no one will believe a street girl." Ms. Marlene adjusted her broken glasses and sighed. "That's how the world is, my dear. The powerful always win." "But it's not fair," Sophia protested. "He was kind to me. He doesn't deserve to be tricked." Mr. Gerald scratched his grey beard, thoughtful. "What if you found out more about this contract? Maybe you could better understand what they're planning." "How?" Sophia questioned. "Well, you mentioned the meeting is tomorrow, right? Maybe we could take a look at that contract before the signing." Ms. Marlene's eyes widened. "Gerald, don't put ideas into the girl's head. That could be dangerous." But Sophia was already thinking about the possibilities. If she could see the contract, maybe she could understand the plan. She had learned several languages in her years on the streets, a necessity in New York City, a city of immigrants. She had basic notions of Mandarin, thanks to an elderly Chinese man who sold street food and taught her in exchange for help with translations for Brazilian customers. "I have to try," Sophia decided. "I can't just stand by while that terrible woman and his brother deceive Mr. Richard." That night, in the luxurious Mendonça apartment in Central Park West, Camilla prepared for dinner with the investors when she received a text message from the actor, hired to impersonate the Chinese businessman. "All set for tomorrow. I've memorized all the lines in Mandarin. No one will suspect." Camilla smiled, satisfied, then deleted the message. She put on an elegant red dress, the color of luck in Chinese culture, a calculated detail to impress the guests. After finishing getting ready, she found Richard in the office reviewing documents. "Still working, dear?" she asked, feigning interest. We should leave in 20 minutes. Richard looked up, momentarily dazzled by his wife's beauty. After 10 years, Camilla still had that effect on him. I'm almost done. I just wanted to make sure I fully understand the main terms of the agreement. Camilla approached, massaging her husband's tense shoulders. Don't worry so much. Trust me, this will be the deal of your life. Richard smiled, unaware of the cruel irony in his wife's words. What would I do without you, Camilla? She kissed the top of his head, smiling coldly. You'll never have to find out, dear. As the couple left for dinner, Sophia put her plan into action. With the help of Mr. Gerald and other homeless people, she gathered information about the security company that provided night surveillance for Mendonça developments. One of the guards frequented a bar near the bridge and, after a few beers, became surprisingly talkative. The boss's office is on the top floor, right corner, he revealed to Mr. Gerald, unaware that the information would reach Sophia. It has an incredible view of the city, and a state-of-the-art security system, of course. Sophia knew she wouldn't be able to enter the building again. Her description had already been circulated to security. But she needed to find a way to see the contract before the signing. What time is the meeting tomorrow? She asked Ms. Marlene. The guard mentioned it would start at 10 a.m. It seems they've closed off the entire executive floor for the event. Sophia pondered her options. Security would be reinforced, and she was already known. Entering the building would be virtually impossible. She would need another approach. That night, while Richard and Camilla dined with the investors, Philip secretly met with the fake Chinese businessman for a final rehearsal. Remember, you don't need to say much, Philip instructed. Just short phrases in Mandarin, and Camilla and I will conveniently translate. Paul Nash, the hired actor, nodded confidently. Don't worry. I once played a Japanese man in a soap opera, and no one noticed the difference. Philip rolled his eyes but didn't comment. As long as the plan worked, it didn't matter how authentic the imposter's Mandarin was. Remember, as soon as Richard signs, you disappear. You'll take the first flight out of the country and never return to the United States. For this amount, Paul replied, indicating the check in his hand. I can even forget that the United States exists. In the Mendonça apartment, after dinner, Richard felt confident. The investors seemed enthusiastic about the project, and everything indicated that the next day would be a milestone in his career. It was a perfect night, he commented to Camilla as they prepared for bed. Just the beginning of a new era for us, she replied, with a smile that Richard interpreted as love, but which hid only calculation. The next morning, in the early hours of the day, Sophia was already in position. She had discovered that cleaning staff entered at 5 a.m. before the start of normal working hours. With the help of Ms. Celia, who had sympathized with her cause, she again obtained a borrowed uniform and badge. Just be careful, my dear, Ms. Celia warned, adjusting the badge on Sophia's uniform. Today the building will be full of important people. If they catch you again, I don't know what might happen. Sophia thanked her, promising to be more cautious. This time her plan was not as audacious as trying to speak directly with Richard. She only wanted to see the contract, confirm her suspicions and, if possible, find a way to warn him about the trap. Entering the building before dawn, along with the cleaning crew, Sophia managed to go unnoticed. The preparations for the important meeting kept everyone too busy to notice an extra girl among the employees. Following Ms. Celia's instructions, she went to the executive floor via the service stairs, avoiding cameras and security guards. The floor was being prepared for the meeting. Employees adjusted the conference room, placing water, coffee, and small arrangements with typical Chinese flowers, a detail planned by Camilla to impress the supposed investors. Sophia moved discreetly, pretending to clean surfaces while observing everything. At one point, she saw Camilla enter the room carrying a red folder. She placed it on the main table and gave some instructions to an assistant. When she left, Sophia waited a few minutes and then approached the table, pretending to clean the glass top. With her heart racing, she discreetly opened the folder. Inside was the contract, written in Chinese characters. Sophia didn't fully master Mandarin, but she could understand enough to confirm her suspicions. The document was not about a real estate partnership, but rather a complete transfer of assets. What are you doing here? Sophia froze. The voice behind her left no doubt, and it was Philip. Turning slowly, she faced the man's furious gaze. "You again? How did you get in?" Before she could respond, Philip called the security guards on his radio. Sophia tried to escape but was quickly surrounded. "Take her to the security room," Philip ordered. "And this time make sure she doesn't escape." Sophia was led to a small room in the basement, where the building's monitoring center was located. Philip followed them, determined to understand how a child had managed to bypass security twice. "Now let's talk," he said when they were alone. "Who sent you here? Was it a competitor trying to spy on our business?" "No one sent me," Sophia replied, firm despite her fear. "I came because I know what you and Camilla are planning. That contract is not what Mr. Richard thinks." Philip paled momentarily, but soon regained his composure, forcing a laugh. "A street girl who can barely read wants to tell me what's in an international contract. Please don't insult my intelligence." "I can read in several languages," Sophia retorted, "including enough Mandarin to understand that you are deceiving Mr. Richard. You're going to steal everything from him." Philip's smile disappeared. Approaching menacingly, he spoke in a low voice. "Listen carefully, you little busybody. You won't mess up our plans. I'll keep you here until everything is done. After that, well, we'll see what to do with you." Leaving the room, Philip instructed the security guards, "Do not let this girl leave under any circumstances. It's a matter of corporate security." Alone, Sophia felt despair grow. The meeting would begin in a few hours, and she was trapped, unable to warn Richard. She looked around, searching for an exit, anything that could help her. The room was simple: a table, a few chairs, a computer, and monitors showing different areas of the building. One of the security guards had remained outside, guarding the door. Sophia approached the computer. It was on, showing the camera monitoring screen. She tried to access the corporate email, thinking of sending a message to Richard, but needed a password. Frustrated, she continued to examine the room. She noticed a phone on the wall, an internal line. She approached silently and picked up the receiver. There was a dial tone. Now she needed to find Richard's extension. On the monitor, she saw a list of extensions next to the computer. She quickly searched and found Richard Mendonza, CEO, extension 5001. She dialed the numbers, praying he would answer personally. After 3 rings, a female voice answered, "Dr. Richard Mendonza's office." It was Dora, the secretary. Sophia hesitated but decided to risk it. "I urgently need to speak with Dr. Richard. It's about today's meeting with the Chinese investors." "Who's calling?" Dora asked, suspicious. "My name is Sophia. It's an emergency. Please, he needs to know that the contract is not what it seems. Where are you calling from?" "This is an internal extension." Sophia realized the situation was getting complicated. "Please just tell him that the Mandarin contract is a fraud. Camilla and Philip are planning to steal everything from him." There was a silence on the other end. Finally, Dora spoke. "I'll inform him, but I need to know where you are. I'm in the security room in the basement. They locked me in here so I couldn't warn Dr. Richard." "Wait a moment." Sophia waited, anxious, but the call was suddenly interrupted. The room door opened, and Philip entered, furious. Behind him, Dora watched with a confused expression. "Is this the intruder?" the secretary asked. "Yes," Philip replied. "A little con artist who has been trying to infiltrate the company for days. Now she's using the internal phone to spread lies." Dora looked at Sophia with uncertainty. "She just looks like a child." "Don't be fooled," Philip interrupted. "She's smarter than she looks." Turning to Sophia, he added, "Now you've gone too far. Dora, inform security that we're removing this intruder from the building immediately. The police will handle her." "The police?" Dora seemed hesitant. "She's just a girl, Mr. Philip. Maybe we could—" "Don't question my orders," Philip exploded, startling Dora. "And don't mention any of this to Richard. He's focused on the meeting, and this is just a minor security issue." Dora nodded, intimidated, and left the room. Philip turned to Sophia, his face contorted with rage. "You don't give up, do you? Well, it's over now. I'll personally make sure you don't interfere anymore." Philip called 2 security guards and ordered them to take Sophia away from the building. As she was being led out, Sophia desperately tried to think of another solution. Her only hope was that Dora had believed her enough to mention something to Richard, despite Philip's threats. On the executive floor, Preparations for the meeting were complete. Richard greeted the visitors cordially, noticing they seemed slightly confused. Before they could sit down, Dora discreetly entered, accompanied by an elderly man of Asian descent. "Dr. Richard, this is Professor Chen from the Institute of Oriental Languages. He kindly agreed to help us with that matter we discussed." Richard nodded, grateful for Dora's efficiency. Camilla watched the scene with growing apprehension. "Richard, who is this man? We didn't agree on external translators." "Just a last-minute precaution, dear," Richard replied casually. "Professor Chen, would you mind taking a look at this contract, please?" Camilla quickly intervened. "Richard, this is an offense to our Chinese partners. They might interpret it as distrust." Richard observed the visitors, who did not seem offended by the translator's presence. On the contrary, one of them smiled and said something in Mandarin that Richard didn't understand. Professor Chen responded in the same language, and a brief conversation ensued between them. The visitors seemed increasingly confused, while Camilla visibly paled. "What's going on?" Richard asked, realizing something was wrong. Professor Chen turned to him with a grave expression. "Mr. Mendonça, these gentlemen are very confused. They say they are not investors, but a cultural delegation from Sichuan province, here to discuss an exchange with Brazilian universities. They know nothing about a real estate deal." Richard looked at Camilla, who was trying to maintain her composure. "There must be some mistake," she said quickly. "Perhaps they are the wrong representatives. We will check with the embassy." At that moment, the unidentified man who had entered with the delegation tried to discreetly leave the room. One of the Chinese visitors pointed at him, saying something in Mandarin. "What did he say?" Richard asked Professor Chen. "He said that this man introduced himself as their translator at the hotel, but he doesn't speak a word of Mandarin. He only pretended to translate a few phrases and brought them here, saying they would participate in a meeting about cultural cooperation." All the pieces began to fall into place in Richard's mind. He turned to Camilla, who was now visibly nervous. "Who is this man, Camilla? And where is the real Mr. Zhang?" Before she could answer, the supposed translator ran to the door but was stopped by the security guards. "Hold him!" Richard ordered, his voice now filled with authority. Turning to Professor Chen, he asked, "And the contract? What does it actually say?" The professor examined the document for a few moments, turning the pages with growing concern. "Mr. Mendonça, this is not a commercial agreement. It is a complete transfer of assets and shares to a company called Offshore Holdings Limited, registered in the Cayman Islands. The document authorizes the immediate transfer of 85% of your assets to this company without compensation." Silence filled the room. Richard looked at Camilla, betrayal etched on her face. "Why?" was all he could say. Philip chose that moment to enter the room, breathless and disheveled after the incident with the police. "You're late, Philip," Richard said coldly. "Your plan has already been exposed." "I don't know what you're talking about," Philip tried, looking nervously at Camilla. Richard turned to Dora. "Call the police. I want to file a complaint for attempted fraud." "Don't be ridiculous, Richard," Camilla intervened, trying one last card. "It was just a translation error." "We can correct everything." "An error?" Richard gave a dry laugh. "How long have you and Philip been planning this? And who is this man?" The translator, captured by the security guards, spoke, trying to save himself. "I'm just a hired actor. They paid me to pretend to be a Chinese translator. I didn't know it was a scam." Camilla gave him a deadly look. Philip looked about to collapse. Richard sat down heavily, the reality of the betrayal hitting him hard. 10 years of marriage, Camilla. "And you, Philip?" "My own brother." One of the executives present approached. "Dr. Richard, what do you wish to do now?" Richard looked at the Chinese visitors, embarrassed by the situation. "First, extend my sincere apologies to the delegation. Offer them a city tour and a courtesy dinner as compensation for the inconvenience." Turning to Camilla and Philip, he continued, "As for you two, I want you to leave my building immediately. My lawyers will be in contact." "Richard, be reasonable," Camilla tried, fake tears welling in her eyes. "It was just a misunderstanding. Enough with the lies." Richard exploded. "If it weren't for that girl trying to warn me, I would have lost everything today." "What girl?" one of the executives asked, confused. A homeless child who tried to warn me about this trap. You threw her out of the building, didn't you? He looked accusingly at Philip. Philip averted his gaze, not answering. Find her, Richard ordered. I want to thank her personally. As the security guards escorted Camilla, Philip, and the fake translator out, Richard went to the adjacent meeting room, needing a moment alone to process everything. Dora followed him, worried. Dr. Richard, is everything all right? He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. How could I have been so blind, Dora? My own wife, my brother. Don't blame yourself, sir. They deceived everyone. Not everyone. That girl saw right through them. A security guard entered the room, looking hesitant. Dr. Richard, about the girl in the wheelchair. Mr. Philip drove her away about an hour ago. Richard felt a pang in his chest. Drove her where? We don't know, sir. But we received a call from the police. It seems there was an incident on Fifth Avenue involving Mr. Philip and a child. The girl managed to escape with the help of homeless people. A momentary relief swept over Richard. She's all right then? Apparently so, sir. But we don't know where she is now. Richard checked his watch. It was past noon. Dora, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. There's something I need to do. You have lunch with the shareholders at 1 p.m. Reschedule it. Say an emergency came up. Determined, Richard left the building, ignoring the questions from executives and the confusion that had settled. There was a place he needed to be, something more important than any corporate meeting. At Our Lady of Solace shelter, Sophia waited anxiously. Ty had explained the situation to the local coordinator, Sister Catherine, who knew Richard from his volunteer work. He comes every Monday to serve lunch to our assisted residents, the nun confirmed. He never misses, even with his busy schedule. But today he had a very important meeting, Sophia replied, fearing Richard wouldn't show up. The sister smiled serenely. If I know Richard well, he will come. Some things are more important than business, my dear. The shelter's refectory began to fill. Homeless people, needy elderly and struggling families lined up for the day's meal. Sophia positioned herself near the entrance, vigilant, while Ty helped distribute cutlery and napkins. At 1:15 p.m., as Sophia began to lose hope, the shelter door opened. Richard entered, still wearing his meeting suit, but with his sleeves rolled up and his tie loosened. Sister Catherine approached to greet him. Richard, how good that you came. We feared your important meeting would keep you today. Some things are more important, sister, he replied, unconsciously repeating the nun's words. Besides, I needed to clear my head. I understand. Well, your apron is in the usual place. Richard headed to the staff locker when he noticed Sophia watching him intensely from her wheelchair. He recognized her immediately. You, he exclaimed, approaching. I've been looking for you. Sophia smiled shyly. And I for you. Richard knelt to be at her level, his eyes moist with emotion. You tried to warn me about the contract. How did you know? I overheard your wife and brother talking, Sophia explained. I didn't understand everything, but I know a little Mandarin. I learned from an old man who sold street food near the bridge where I slept. When I saw the contract, I realized it was a trap. Why did you risk so much to warn me? You don't even know me. Sophia lowered her gaze, suddenly embarrassed. You were kind to me that night, leaving the restaurant. No one had been that kind in a long time. I couldn't let them trick you. Richard felt a lump in his throat, touched by the purity of that gesture. What's your name? Sophia. Sophia Oliver. Well, Sophia Oliver, you saved not only my company but also my dignity. How can I thank you? Before Sophia could answer, sounds of commotion came from the shelter entrance. Camilla and Philip appeared, accompanied by two intimidating-looking men. There she is, Philip shouted, pointing at Sophia. Get her. Richard stood up, placing himself protectively in front of Sophia. What do you think you're doing? Getting out of your way as you ordered, Camilla replied coldly. But first we're taking this little busybody who ruined our plans. The people in the refectory watched the scene, tense. Sister Catherine quickly approached. This is a shelter, a place of peace. I ask you to leave immediately. Not without her, Philip insisted. One of the men advanced menacingly, but was stopped by Ty and other homeless people who stood beside Sophia and Richard. I suggest you leave now, Richard, said, his voice filled with authority. The police are already on their way to arrest you for attempted fraud. Don't make the situation worse with a kidnapping charge." As if to confirm his words, sirens sounded outside. Dora had taken the initiative to track Richard's phone and send the police to the location. Camilla cast one last hateful glance at Sophia. "You destroyed everything, you miserable little thing." "No, Camilla," Richard corrected. "You destroyed yourselves with your greed and betrayal." The police entered the shelter, leading Camilla, Philip, and their accomplices out. Richard turned to Sophia, who watched the scene with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "You're safe now," he assured her. "Where do I go?" Sophia asked, the reality of her situation returning. "I can't go back to the bridge. They might find me when they're released." Richard knelt beside her again. "Sophia, you've shown more courage and integrity than many adults I know. If you'll allow me, I'd like to help you." "How?" she asked, suspicious after years of empty promises. "To start by offering you a home, proper medical treatment, education, everything you deserve and have been denied until now." Sophia's eyes widened. "You want to adopt me?" "If you accept," Richard replied with a gentle smile. "I always wanted children, but Camilla, well, that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that perhaps we can help each other. You saved me, Sophia. Perhaps it's my turn to repay you." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, years of suffering and abandonment giving way to unexpected hope. She extended her small, calloused hand, which Richard held tenderly. "Yes," she whispered. "I accept." 3 months later, Mendonza Developments had transformed. Under Richard's new leadership, the company redirected a significant portion of its profits to social projects, with an emphasis on accessibility and inclusion. Camilla's divorce was underway, and Philip faced lawsuits for fraud and corporate mismanagement. Sophia, now legally Richard's daughter, underwent intensive medical treatments at the best orthopedic hospital in New York City. Doctors were optimistic about the possibility of her partially regaining leg movement through surgeries and physical therapy. More important than the physical treatment, however, was the transformation in her life. Enrolled in a renowned school, Sophia proved to be a brilliant student, especially in languages. Her basic Mandarin knowledge was being perfected with private lessons, and she was already talking about studying international relations in the future. On a sunny Sunday morning, Richard and Sophia strolled through Central Park. She still used a wheelchair, but a new modern one suited to her needs. Her face, once pale and tense, now radiated health and joy. "I've been thinking," Richard commented, as they stopped to observe the lake. "About what?" "About how to further transform the company. I wanted to create a foundation to help vulnerable children, especially those with disabilities." Sophia smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea. And I'd like it to bear your name, the Sophia Foundation." She blushed, surprised. "My name? But why?" "Because you taught me the most important lesson of recent years, that true wealth is not in contracts or business, but in integrity and the courage to do what is right, even when everything conspires against you." Sophia reflected for a moment. "You know what else I'd like for this foundation?" "Tell me." "That it also helped people like Ty, Miss Celia, Mr. Gerald, and Ms. Marlene. They helped me when no one else did. They deserve a chance." Richard smiled, proud. "Consider it done. In fact, I've already hired Ty as the security supervisor for the new shelter we're building." "Seriously? He'll love that." Sophia laughed, imagining her friend in his new role. As they continued their walk, Richard reflected on life's twists and turns. He had lost a treacherous wife and a disloyal brother, but gained a daughter whose courage and kindness surpassed any blood tie. The Sophia Foundation was inaugurated 6 months later, with modern facilities dedicated to the care, treatment, and education of children with disabilities in vulnerable situations. The first building of the complex was a model shelter, with capacity to accommodate 200 homeless people, offering not only housing, but also professional training and social reintegration. On the inauguration day, Sophia, now able to take a few steps with the aid of crutches, cut the ribbon alongside Richard. Among the special guests were Ty, Miss Celia, Mr. Gerald, and Ms. Marlene, all now employees of the foundation, using their experiences to help others. A reporter approached Richard. "Mr. Mendonza, what motivated you to create this foundation?" Richard looked at Sophia with pride. "It wasn't really me who created it. It was this extraordinary young woman who taught me that a simple act of kindness can change destinies. It all started with a plate of food offered to a stranger, and ended with an unexpected family, Sophia completed, smiling at her adoptive father. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Camilla and Philip were performing community service as part of their sentence. Ironically, they had been assigned to work at a shelter for homeless people, a lesson in humility imposed by the judge, who had known Sophia's story and been moved by it. At the end of that day, contemplating the sunset from her new penthouse room she shared with Richard, Sophia wrote in her diary, as she did every night. Today we learned another lesson. Life is a cycle of acts and consequences. An outstretched hand can lift not only those who have fallen, but also those who offer help. My father says I saved him, but the truth is that we saved each other. And we will continue to save others, because now we understand that no one is so small that they cannot make a difference, nor so great that they will not need help someday. Closing her diary, Sophia looked at the city that had once embraced her in its harsh streets and now stretched before her like a horizon of possibilities. Her journey had only just begun. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Richard and Sophia's story has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here on the left side of the screen. If you enjoyed this narrative of overcoming and hope, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Daily, we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the beauty of unexpected encounters. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on this story in the comments, which shows us how small gestures can transform entire lives. Until next time.